I never thought my life would take a sharp turn at a wedding that wasn't even mine. That day, I was just the girl behind the camera, trying to make a name for myself in the chaotic world of photography. My job was to capture the joy, the tears, and, if I got lucky, the soul of the moment. Little did I know, my soul was about to intertwine with someone else's. The bride and groom were a typical couple, all smiles and dances, lost in their bubble of happiness. I was moving around, clicking away, making sure to get every angle, when I bumped into him, Alex. He was a guest, a friend of the groom's or something. Tall, with a mischievous grin that didn't match the formal wear he was somewhat uncomfortably stuffed into. "Whoa, careful there. Wouldn't want you ruining your camera before the cake cutting," he joked, steadying my arm. I rolled my eyes, not really in the mood for banter. "Thanks, I guess. I'll manage." He chuckled, not at all deterred. "Name's Alex. And you are?" "Does it matter?" "I'm just the photographer," I replied, focusing on adjusting my lens rather than his piercing gaze. "Just the photographer who captures moments that'll be treasured for a lifetime." "Sounds pretty important to me," he quipped, leaning in slightly, curious. I sighed, finally giving him a glance. "I'm Mia. And you're blocking my shot." Alex stepped aside, hands raised in surrender, but his smile never wavered. "My apologies, Mia. How about I make it up to you by not getting in your way again?" "Try not to," I muttered, already moving to my next spot, trying to ignore the warmth his smile sparked in me. The wedding went on, and so did our brief encounters. Alex had a knack for popping up wherever I was, each time with a comment or a joke, trying to chip away at my focus. It was annoying. It was also kind of refreshing. As the evening wound down, I found myself outside, taking a breather, when Alex joined me, holding 2 glasses of champagne. "Thought you could use one," he said, handing me a glass. I took it, our fingers brushing briefly. "Why are you so interested in the photographer?" He shrugged, leaning against the railing. "Why wouldn't I be? You're interesting. And pretty damn good with that camera." I sipped the champagne, letting the edge of my guard down. "Thanks. You're not too bad yourself, for an annoying guest." "Annoying, huh?" He grinned. "I prefer charmingly persistent." We talked more than I expected that night. About photography, about life, about dreams that seemed too big for our current worlds. Alex had this way of making everything seem possible. It was dangerous. It was exhilarating. As the night ended and we said our goodbyes, Alex asked for my number. I hesitated, not sure if I wanted to dive into whatever this was. But the spark in his eyes, the promise of more laughs and shared dreams, had me typing my number into his phone. "I'll call you," he said, a statement more than a promise. And call he did. One date turned into many, laughter filled my days, and before I knew it, I was in love. Alex was everything I never knew I needed: supportive, loving, challenging. He made me want to be better, do better. Our whirlwind romance led to a small, intimate wedding, just us and the people who mattered most. A year later, our son, Jake, arrived, turning our duo into a trio, completing our little universe in the bustling heart of the city. Life in the city was a whirlwind of photo shoots, baby giggles, and stolen moments with Alex amidst our busy schedules. But every so often, we'd pack up our little world and head to the suburbs to visit Alex's parents. These trips, meant to be retreats, often felt more like stepping onto a battlefield, where words were weapons and tensions ran high. Alex's dad, George, was a tough nut, old school and hard-edged. The kind of man who believed in hard work above all and wasn't shy about saying so. His wife, Ellen, was softer, trying to smooth over her husband's rougher comments with smiles and changes of subject. The first visit after Jake was born set the tone for what was to become a recurring theme. We'd just settled in, Jake asleep in my arms, when George launched into his usual spiel. "So, Alex, how's the job going? Still at that same place?" George's voice was casual, but his eyes were sharp, probing. Alex shifted uncomfortably, glancing at me before answering. Yeah, Dad, still there. It's going well. George snorted. Well, hope you're thinking about the future. Now with the kid and all, you can't afford to be just going well. Need to aim higher, son. I felt Alex tense beside me. I could see him mentally bracing himself, the same old argument brewing. Ellen, sensing the mood shift, hurriedly interjected. George, let's not start with that now. Can't we just enjoy the visit? But George was on a roll. And what about you, Mia? Still taking pictures of other people's weddings? Thought you'd move on to something bigger by now. I bit my lip, holding back the retort that it was more than just taking pictures. Instead, I forced a smile. I love what I do, George. It's fulfilling, and it works with our schedule. Yeah, but is it enough? You two need to think about stability, for Jake's sake. George countered, his tone implying that our choices were anything but stable. It wasn't long before another visit rolled around. This time, George's health had taken a turn for the worse. The atmosphere was somber, Ellen worn out from worry, and George, though quieter, still managed to jab at Alex's career choices. Working hard or hardly working, son? George coughed out, a shadow of his usual confrontational self. Alex, looking weary, tried to keep the peace. Working hard, Dad. Always working hard. I watched the exchange, a lump forming in my throat. It was clear George's time was running out, and yet here we were, stuck in this loop of criticism and defense. After George passed away, the house felt not just emptier but quieter, like the very walls were mourning him. Ellen, now a widow, was a shadow of her bustling, energetic self. It was hard watching her go through the motions, trying to adjust to a life without her partner of so many years. I made it a point to call her often, lending an ear, or just sharing the day-to-day happenings to break through her solitude. She appreciated it, I could tell, even if our conversations were often peppered with her sighs and reminiscing about George. During one of these calls, Ellen mentioned that Laura, Alex's sister, decided to move back home. The news hit Alex like a ton of bricks. He was livid, cursing under his breath about Laura's real intentions. Can you believe her? Moving in with Mom, just like that? It's clear as day, she's eyeing the inheritance. Always the opportunist, waiting to swoop in. Alex fumed over dinner, his fork hitting the plate a little too hard. I was taken aback by his anger. Alex, isn't she just trying to be there for your mom? After all, Ellen is going through a lot right now. He scoffed, shaking his head. Mia, you don't know Laura like I do. She's slick, always playing the caring daughter card when it suits her. And now, with Dad gone, she's probably got her sights set on whatever she can get her hands on. It was surprising, hearing Alex talk this way about his sister. I knew they had their differences, but this was a side of him I hadn't seen. It made me uneasy, the ease with which he painted Laura in such dark strokes. The shift from our city apartment to Ellen's suburban home was jarring. One day we were in the heart of the hustle, the next, surrounded by two quiet streets and the ever-present shadow of George's absence. This move, sprung on us by Alex, wasn't welcomed by any party involved, least of all Ellen. Alex, what on earth are you thinking? This house is my space to grieve, not a hotel for your family. Ellen had protested over the phone, her voice a mix of shock and irritation. But Alex was determined, painting it as a grand gesture of support. Mom, it's settled. We're coming. You shouldn't be alone in that big house anyway. I watched him pace our living room, phone pressed to his ear, marveling at his stubbornness. My input? Seemingly unnecessary. By the time he hung up, it was a done deal, despite Ellen's reservations and my own unease. The day we moved in, Ellen greeted us with a tight smile, her home now invaded by our clutter and noise. Laura was there too, her welcome far less strained, surprisingly. Hey, the more the merrier, right? She quipped, eyeing our boxes with an indifference that irked Alex. Mia, can you believe this? Alex grumbled as we unpacked in what used to be George's study. Laura's acting like she owns the place. I sighed, setting a framed photo on the desk. She's trying to help her mom, Alex. we're all adjusting here." Adjusting was an understatement. The dynamics within the house shifted like sand underfoot. Ellen, once the matriarch, seemed to shrink, her voice lost amid the chaos of our resettled lives. Laura, on the other hand, floated through her days, contributing little and observing much. Dinner times were the worst. Ellen would cook, a silent figure moving through her kitchen, while Laura somehow always dodged the task. Alex and I would offer to help, but Ellen's polite refusals left us sidelined, spectators in our own lives. "Why don't you let me cook tomorrow, Ellen?" I'd offer, only to be met with a weary smile. "Oh, dear, no need. I've got it. You take care of Jake and your work. That's enough." And so, the pattern continued, with me feeling more like a guest than a member of the household. It didn't take long for the financial arrangements to rear their ugly head. Alex, ever the man of the house, took it upon himself to dictate terms. "Mia, I'll handle the groceries. You can cover the utilities, all right?" he declared one evening, as if it were the most natural division of responsibilities. I blinked, taken aback. "Sure, I guess. But should we talk about this with Ellen? It's her house, after all." Alex waved off my concerns. "No need. Mom's got enough on her plate. We're helping out." Helping out felt a lot like taking over. My photography gigs became my escape, a chance to breathe beyond the suffocating walls of a home that wasn't ours. Yet, even as I immersed myself in work, the home front demanded more. Laura's busy schedule somehow justified her lack of contribution, leaving me to pick up the slack. "Mia, can you believe Laura? Always too busy to help out. It's all on you and Mom," Alex would rant, oblivious to the irony of his words. I'd nod, biting back my frustration. "Yeah, too busy. I noticed. It wasn't just the chores or the finances. It was the weight of living under a roof filled with unspoken grievances and mourning." Ellen's grief was a constant presence, her occasional tears a reminder of the life she lost. Laura's indifference and Alex's growing bitterness added layers to an already complex living situation. 2 years had melted away since we moved into Ellen's place, and life had found its peculiar rhythm. Ellen, though frilier with each passing day, never lost her spirit, always finding a bit of strength to help me with Jake, who was now 3 and as curious as a cat. He had this thing for gadgets, mimicking me whenever I was on my phone or working with my camera. So, thinking it might fuel his curiosity in a good way, I got him a kitty smartphone. It was a hit. He was snapping photos of everything from his half-eaten breakfast to his toys strewn across the floor, and using the voice recorder like he was on some secret mission. One day, Alex decided to take Jake for a walk, a bit of father-son bonding time. They came back with Jake chattering nonstop about the ducks they saw. As I was cleaning up, I spotted Jake's toy phone left on the couch, a little smudged. I picked it up, intending to give it a quick wipe, when my finger accidentally hit the play button on one of the voice recordings. What I heard next stopped me cold. It was Alex and Laura, their voices clear as day, talking in a way I'd never imagined. They weren't at each other's throats, as they'd have us believe. No, they were in cahoots, laying out plans that chilled me to the bone. Alex's voice cut through first. "We've got to be smarter about this, Laura. Mom's no fool, she's starting to ask questions." Laura's reply was sharp. "Chill, Alex. You worry too much. We just need to keep up the act a little longer." My heart raced. Act? What act? Alex was confessing to Laura about losing his job because he couldn't be bothered to show up, admitting he'd been mooching off me ever since. But what twisted the knife was their scheme against Ellen. Laura was ranting about Ellen's plans to move to a fancy nursing home, how they needed to stop her before she drained what they saw as their inheritance. Their plot was sinister, talking about declaring Ellen incompetent, all to grab her property. Or is it better to get rid of her physically altogether? The recording cut off abruptly, leaving a silence that roared in my ears. I sat there, the phone still in my hand, my mind racing. Betrayal wasn't a strong enough word for this. This was cold, calculated deceit, a stab in the back from the people I considered family. And yet, as furious and shaken as I was, I knew I couldn't confront Alex right away. No, I needed to play this smart, for Ellen's sake, for Jake's. I couldn't let on that I knew. So, I swallowed the storm inside me, and went about the evening as if nothing had changed. Dinner was a blur. I nodded and smiled robotically, watching Alex and Laura bicker over trivialities, a performance I now knew was just for show. I had to tell Ellen. She needed to know the depth of deceit circling around her. When I played the recording for Ellen, her reaction was a mix of resignation and sadness. I had my suspicions, dear, she sighed, but I never had the proof. And to think, I've been helping them out financially whenever they asked. Ellen's resolve firmed up as we talked. I've been considering moving into a nursing home, actually. I have the savings for it. But now, hearing this, we need to act, and fast, before they realize we're onto them. We called in a lawyer when Alex and Laura were out, ensuring our plans remained under wraps. Ellen was clear and direct, instructing the lawyer to change her will to exclude both Alex and Laura. The lawyer nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. A few days later, during a family dinner that was tense at best, Ellen dropped her bombshell. "I've decided to give you the house," she announced, watching as Alex and Laura's faces lit up with greedy anticipation. But then, she added the condition about paying for their 2-year stay, to the tune of $186,000. The smug smiles vanished, replaced by shock and outrage. "You can't be serious. We're not paying for anything," Alex exploded, with Laura chiming in, echoing his disbelief. Ellen remained unfazed. "Then I'll see you in court for conspiring against me," she countered, her voice steady. Their protests died down when I played the damning recording from Jake's phone. The shift in their demeanor was immediate, from outrage to fear, then to turning on each other, trying to shift the blame. Ellen's disappointment was palpable. "I don't want you two around anymore," she declared, her decision final. It was then I laid the divorce papers in front of Alex. "I'm done supporting you. You've lied, not just on me, but on your own mother," I said, my voice firm, betraying none of the turmoil inside. Alex's attempts at excuses were pathetic, and Laura was no better, both of them realizing too late the game was up. "I can't be with someone who'd plot against his own mother," I continued. "We're leaving." The dust had barely settled from the explosion of truths, before I found myself packing up what felt like a lifetime's worth of memories into a few boxes. Jake, bless his heart, was too young to understand the storm swirling around us, his main concern being whether his toys were coming along. "Mommy, can Bear and Mr. Dino come too?" Jake asked, holding up his worn stuffed bear and the plastic dinosaur that had seen better days. "Of course, sweetie. They're part of the family," I reassured him, forcing a smile as I packed his treasures into a box marked Jake's stuff. The apartment we moved into was a stark contrast to Ellen's spacious house, but it was ours, a sanctuary from the chaos we'd left behind. The first few nights, the silence was deafening, a reminder of the void left by the absence of familial bickering and the undercurrent of deceit. A week later, Ellen, bless her heart, decided it was time to move to that fancy nursing home she'd been talking about. Said she needed a change of scenery, and honestly, who could blame her? I went over to help her pack up her things. It was the least I could do after all we'd been through together. Alex was there too, hovering around, trying to act like he wanted to make things right between us. As if a few sorry words could fix the heap of lies he buried us under. I couldn't even bring myself to look him straight in the eye without feeling a mix of anger and pity. Just gave him this look that said, "Save it," and kept on packing. The divorce wasn't easy, but then again, what divorce is? The judge ended up making Alex pay me $50,000, compensation for all the years he'd been living off me while playing happy families. Felt like a small win, but a win nonetheless. A few months down the line, Alex and Laura finally coughed up the $186,000 they owed Ellen for staying in her house, after taking out loans against it. Ellen didn't waste any time putting that money straight into her own account, making sure it was out of reach from those two. Watching Ellen settle into that nursing home, a place she could finally call her own without the constant drama, made me think about what's really important. "I just wish it hadn't come to this," she told me as we finished setting up her room. "Me too, Ellen. But we're here now, and we've got to make the best of it," I said, trying to stay strong for the both of us. Settling into our new life wasn't easy, but Jake and I were making the most of it. Our apartment might have been small, but it was ours, and that made all the difference. I started picking up more photography gigs, each click of the camera a step towards rebuilding our lives. One day, as I was sorting through photos from a recent shoot, Jake came up to me, his little face screwed up in concentration. "Mommy, when can we visit Grandma Ellen again? I miss her." "Soon, buddy," I replied, ruffling his hair. "How about this weekend? We can make a day of it." His face lit up, and in that moment, I knew no matter how tough things got, we'd be okay as long as we had each other. Visiting Ellen became our little ritual. Despite the luxury surrounding her in the nursing home, she always said our visits were the highlight of her week. It was during one of these visits that things took an unexpected turn. Alex and Laura were there, looking more run down than I remembered. The desperation was clear in their eyes, a far cry from the confident facade they used to put on. They were practically on their knees, begging Ellen for money, saying the old house was falling apart and they had nowhere else to turn. Ellen was firm, her voice steady as she refused them. "I've made my decision. The rest of what I have is going to Mia and Jake. You two have done enough damage." I couldn't help but feel a mix of vindication and sadness hearing that. Alex and Laura turned to me, their eyes blazing with anger. "This is all you're doing. You've turned her against us," Alex hissed, his voice low but filled with venom. Laura chimed in. "Yeah, playing the victim and now look, living off what should have been ours." Ellen's patience snapped. "Enough. If you two don't stop this nonsense, I'll take that recording to the police." "Don't think I won't do it." The threat of the recording being handed to the authorities was enough to send them packing. Their exit was swift, leaving a heavy silence in their wake. Ellen turned to me, her gaze softening. "I'm sorry you had to witness that, Mia. But I've seen enough to know where my support is best placed." I was taken aback by her words, a lump forming in my throat. "Ellen, thank you. It means the world to us, but we don't want you to feel like you owe us anything." She shook her head. "I owe you more than you know. You and Jake, you're my family. And it's high time I looked out for my real family." As we left the nursing home that day, I couldn't shake off the mixture of emotions swirling inside me. Relief, gratitude, but also a renewed determination to build a better future for Jake, one not shadowed by the deceit and betrayal of the past. Me and Jake, we kept visiting Ellen in that fancy nursing home she moved into. It was nice, seeing her in a good place, away from all the drama. But then, one day, she dropped a bombshell on us during one of our visits. "The house, it's gone," Ellen said out of the blue, her voice shaking a bit. "The bank took it because of the debts Alex and Laura racked up." I could see the pain in her eyes, the disappointment. It was like she was questioning everything she ever did as a mother. "I can't believe it's come to this. After everything I tried to do for them." "Ellen, this ain't on you," I told her, trying to make her see reason. "You did everything a mother could. It's their choices that got them here, not yours." She looked at me, then at Jake, who was busy with a coloring book we'd brought along. "At least I've got Jake," she said after a moment, a small smile breaking through. "He's a blessing, Mia. You both are." It was hard, watching her grapple with the mess her children had left behind. But in those moments, I saw the strength in her, the resilience. She had faced her share of battles, but she wasn't letting this defeat her. As for Alex and Laura, they vanished, leaving a trail of debts and broken relationships in their wake. Ellen didn't even know where they'd ended up, and honestly, I didn't care to know either. They chose their path, and now they had to walk it, wherever it led. Ellen, you've got us, I reminded her as we got ready to leave that day. Me and Jake, we're your family too, and we're not going anywhere. She hugged us both, holding on a little longer than usual. Thank you, Mia, for everything. Driving back to our apartment, I couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed. The road hadn't been easy, but we were making it through, one day at a time. And through it all, we found something worth holding on to, each other.